Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
You're not pure, so don't wear white. That's what my sister spat at me 3 days before her wedding, with a smirk that curled at the edges like a ribbon on a gift you know is meant to mock you. I didn't answer, I just smiled. And on the day of her perfect little ceremony, in front of her perfect little friends and her perfect little future in laws, I walked in, head held high, back straight like I was still on base, not blinking even once, wearing my full military dress uniform, polished boots, every medal pinned exactly where it belonged. The photographer froze. The room did too. But to understand how we got to that moment, why I did what I did, you need to know the kind of family I come from and the kind of sister Erin is. Erin was always the golden child, not the smartest, not the kindest, and sure as hell not the most disciplined, but charming in that effortless, syrupy way that girls with natural curls and a natural flair for drama always seem to be. Mom loved her like she hung the damn moon. Even when she flunked her first year at community college, Mom said it was because the professors didn't get her spirit. Dad never said much, but when he did, it was usually to ask me to drive Erin somewhere or help her out with something she forgot. Again. It didn't matter that I was juggling ROTC, part-time shifts at the clinic, and carrying a full pre-med course load. Erin needed help with her resume. Guess who they called? Erin crashed her car. Guess who picked her up? Erin didn't want to clean her room before prom. Guess who Mom yelled at until I did it? Me. It was always me. I joined the Army straight out of college, not because I was some patriotic poster child, or because I had no options. I had offers. I could have gone to nursing school, maybe even med school, but I wanted out of the house, out of the noise, out of the thankless role of family mule. I wanted to do something that mattered, something that didn't get wiped away by Erin's tears or Mom's passive-aggressive sighs. When I deployed to Afghanistan, Erin posted a photo on Facebook with the caption, "So proud of my sister, even though I don't understand why she wants to be somewhere so dusty." That was the extent of her support. Dusty. Like I was on vacation. 2 tours, 1 shattered ankle, a purple heart, 3 funerals of friends I carried back with shaking hands. I came home with a medical discharge and a silence in me that no one in my family noticed, because they were too busy planning Erin's engagement brunch. I wasn't bitter then, just tired, but that changed. The wedding invitation arrived in a white and gold envelope, fancy and thick, like it had something important to say. It was addressed to Miss Laura Spencer, not captain, not even veteran, just Miss. I opened it, expecting the usual fluff. What I got was something else. Tucked inside, in perfect cursive, was a personal note from Erin. P.S. Please don't wear white. It's reserved for the bride, obviously. Obviously, I didn't plan to wear white. I hadn't even thought about what I'd wear. But something about the tone, the way she wrote obviously, like I was some clueless, backward social pariah who needed instruction, it stayed with me, stung more than I admitted. That note wasn't about color, it was about status. She wanted to remind me where I stood. I called her, asked if she needed help with anything, tried again to play the good sister. She said, "Oh, we've got everything covered, but thanks. You're welcome to sit in the family section, though. Just come a little early so you're not awkward." Not awkward, I asked carefully if she needed another bridesmaid. She laughed. Not even fake laughed. Real laughed. The kind of laugh where you know you're not included in the joke. That night, I pulled out the old garment bag I hadn't unzipped since the day I came home. My dress uniform. I'd packed it neatly, too neatly, almost like I didn't want to admit I might never wear it again. The medals were still pinned. I ran my fingers over the silver edges, felt the cool metal under my skin. Not because I missed the war, I didn't, but because that uniform still meant something to me. Still carried weight, respect, honor. 2 days later, I was helping Mom fold wedding favors in the kitchen. She was fretting over Erin's flowers, talking about how delicate the arrangements were, how everything has to be perfect for her. I nodded, biting my tongue. Mom looked at me and said, "Just try not to overshadow your sister, okay? She's waited a long time for this." Overshadow, like I was a threat. I didn't respond. I just folded another stupid sachet bag and nodded. But that night, something shifted. I thought about Maria, the youngest in our unit, barely 21 when a roadside IED took her out. She'd been excited about planning her wedding back home, had picked out a dress online. It was white. She used to show it to us like it was treasure. She never got to wear it. Aaron, meanwhile, was throwing a tantrum over the font on the seating chart. I sat on my bed staring at the dress uniform hanging from the back of my door. The next morning, I got a group text from Erin. It was a photo of her bridal robe, champagne in hand, surrounded by her bridesmaids. "Can't wait to be the most beautiful bride ever," the caption read. Below it, another message popped up just for me. "Seriously, Laura, no white, don't make things weird." I typed a reply, deleted it, then typed something else, just 3 words, noted, "See you." And I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I had decided. The moment she called me not pure, I knew exactly what I would wear. And the room would stop, just like it should have, years ago. There are moments in life when a single sentence slices through years of politeness, burying itself into the softest, most vulnerable part of your chest, not because the words are sharp in themselves, but because of who says them and how deliberately they're aimed. Erin's "You're not pure, so don't wear white" didn't come out of nowhere, not really, though it felt like a slap. One of those cold, calculated ones, where the person doing it doesn't raise their voice, doesn't flinch, doesn't apologize. Because to them, they've said something factual, and they think you should just accept it like you would a weather report. It was 3 days before the wedding. The final dress fitting was done, the cake was paid for, and Erin was holding court at our parents' house, surrounded by the kind of women who never seemed to age past high school, with their perfect nails, over-laughing at things that weren't funny, sipping on Prosecco as if it gave their lives sparkle. I was in the kitchen, peeling a sticker off a box of wine glasses she'd registered for, not because I was asked to help, but because I didn't want to stand there and listen to her drone on about her pre-honeymoon glow. That's when she cornered me, alone for the first time that day, just outside the laundry room where Mom had started steaming table runners. She didn't look at me when she said it. She was fiddling with a pearl earring, her voice low and casual, the way you might ask someone to take their shoes off at the door. "You're not pure, so don't wear white." She paused then, still not looking at me, waiting for the words to land the way she wanted them to. And oh, they landed. I should have said something sharp, something scathing, something that would remind her I wasn't the quiet, awkward kid who used to cover for her when she snuck out with boys, the one who cleaned her mascara off the sink before Mom saw it, the one who sent her money during college when she accidentally spent her rent on a Coachella ticket. But I didn't, because that's not what this moment was about. This wasn't a fight. It was a final declaration. She wasn't just staking a claim on her wedding. She was reminding me, like she always had, that in her mind, she stood taller, cleaner, better. I smiled, a tight-lipped, trained kind of smile, the kind I'd learned to wear during military briefings when someone tried to condescend to me without using actual rank. I said, "Don't worry, I won't." Then I walked out into the living room, sat on the edge of the couch, and folded programs for the ceremony while listening to a girl named Kimberly talk about how hard it had been to find a nail salon that understood her vibe. What burned wasn't just the insult, it was the hypocrisy, because Erin's version of purity had always been more about the show than the truth. I remembered her sophomore year of college, when she showed up at my apartment crying because the guy she was dating had ghosted her after she lent him $500. Or the time she got so drunk at Dad's retirement dinner, she threw up in the bathroom of a Chili's and made me swear not to tell anyone. She'd made mistakes, a lot of them, but they were always brushed aside, rewritten, covered in a layer of sugar and excuses. Because she had the face for forgiveness and the mouth for good stories. Me? I'd gone to war, seen blood, held death, saved lives, and came back with the kind of baggage no one wanted to help you carry. But because I didn't parade my pain, because I didn't cry in public or ask for absolution, they treated me like I was the one with stains. That night, after everyone had left and the house was finally quiet, I went up to the guest room where I was staying. I sat on the edge of the bed, stared at my suitcase. At the dress I'd brought, a soft blue number that covered everything, simple, polite, invisible. I thought about throwing it out the window. Instead, I unzipped the side pocket of my bag, where I'd packed it without really admitting I had. My uniform. My boots were still clean, my medals still sharp. I laid it all out on the bed like a puzzle I hadn't solved in years. It was all still mine, still real, still pure, in a way Erin would never understand. Because no one had ever asked her to put her body in the path of a bullet, to carry another human being's blood under her nails, or to wake up night after night with the sound of a mortar fire echoing in her ears. The next morning, Mom called me downstairs to help with centerpieces. I found her in the kitchen, snipping roses, humming a Sinatra song like we were living in some vintage magazine spread. She asked if I was okay, and I told her yes. Because what else do you say to a woman who thinks her younger daughter's snide comment was just bridal nerves? As I twisted floral wire into fake eucalyptus, Mom said, "Erin's just anxious. She wants everything to be right. You remember how you used to get before your deployments?" I wanted to laugh, to scream, to ask her if she really thought a combat tour was the same as a wedding at a country club. But instead, I just nodded, because there was no point. Erin had built her world out of gauze and glitter, and Mom was her biggest decorator. By noon, Erin came downstairs in a silk robe, acting like nothing had happened, holding a mimosa and waving her ring hand dramatically whenever she talked. She didn't mention what she'd said the day before. Of course not. In her mind, it had probably vanished the second it left her mouth. But for me, it had calcified into something I couldn't ignore. Before I left that day, Erin cornered me again, this time by the front door. She reached out, smoothed the shoulder of my t-shirt in a mock gentle way, and said, "Just wear something appropriate. Nothing flashy, okay? You're not the show." And I said, without blinking, "I know exactly what I'm going to wear." She didn't hear the weight in those words, but she would. Weddings have a way of turning already unbearable people into something even more heightened, like a caricature of themselves, polished to a blinding shine and wearing their delusions like armor. And as the hours crept closer to Erin's big day, her transformation into a living embodiment of entitlement reached its final, flawless form. The night before the ceremony, the house was buzzing with activity, the kind that crackled in the air like static electricity. But beneath all the fake laughter, behind the soft clinks of champagne glasses and the constant clatter of heels on tile, was a tension so thick you could have carved it with the same knife Erin would use on her overpriced fondant-covered wedding cake. The rehearsal dinner was held at a rented hall that looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. All faux rustic charm with barnwood floors and fairy lights so meticulously strung, it was obvious someone had paid more for the ambiance than the food. Erin wore white, of course, a fitted dress with lace detailing that screamed virginal elegance in a way that was almost comical, considering she'd once bragged to me about sleeping with a bartender in Cabo just to feel something. She was glowing, yes, but it wasn't joy or even love that lit her up. It was attention, the drug she'd been mainlining since she was old enough to realize her smile could stop conversations and bend rules. I sat near the end of the table, 2 seats away from Dad, who was on his 3rd glass of wine and saying almost nothing as usual. I didn't mind being tucked away. It gave me room to observe, to take everything in without being pulled into the farce of small talk and forced cheer. Across from me sat Aunt Diane, who kept asking if I was still doing that army thing, like I'd picked it up as a hobby at the YMCA, and might drop it next week in favor of yoga. I smiled politely and gave her vague answers, because correcting people like that doesn't change anything. They don't want to understand, they just want to hear themselves speak. Then came the speeches. Erin's maid of honor, a woman named Shelby, with teeth so white they looked like they'd been installed yesterday, stood up and delivered a monologue that could have been ripped from a bad rom-com, full of lines like, She's always been the most selfless, generous soul I know, and she's the kind of person who lights up a room just by walking into it. I almost choked on my iced tea. Shelby had apparently forgotten the time Erin faked food poisoning to get out of volunteering at a charity event, or the countless nights she'd lit up a room by drunkenly screaming at customer service reps on speakerphone. But that was the thing with Erin. She curated her image with such precision that people forgot the blemishes even existed, or worse, chose not to see them at all. Then it was Erin's turn. She stood up, glass in hand, and thanked everyone for being there, her voice sweet as syrup, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. And then, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, she said, "And to my sister Laura, thank you for coming back home for this. I know how busy you've been. It means a lot that you take time out of your schedule to be with us." There was a beat, just a second too long, before she continued, "We don't always see eye to eye, but family is family, right?" A few polite chuckles. I forced a smile, nodded once, and stared down at my plate. That was her version of an olive branch. A backhanded compliment dressed up in civility, meant to make her look magnanimous while subtly reminding everyone that I was the odd one out. After dinner, people started to leave in clusters, drifting out into the humid night air, laughing and talking and making plans to meet early at the venue. I offered to help clean up, but Erin waved me off, saying she had a system and didn't want too many hands in the mix. Translation: I'd done my part by showing up and not embarrassing her. That was all she ever really wanted from me, to show up, shut up, and fade into the background like good scenery. Back at the house, I showered, changed into sweats, and sat on the bed, staring at the uniform I'd hung up the night before. The dark fabric looked almost regal in the soft light, the metals catching glints from the bedside lamp like quiet little reminders of things I'd done, things I'd seen, things I didn't talk about because most people didn't really want to know. I thought about my friend Danny, who died in my arms during a medical evac after shrapnel tore through her abdomen. She was 22. She never got to wear a white dress. Her family buried her with a dog tag and a folded flag. I sat there for a long time, thinking about what it meant to be pure. Erin's words kept looping in my head, not because I believed them, but because of the conviction with which she delivered them. It wasn't about morality. It wasn't about virtue. It was about her needing to be above me, needing to believe that no matter what I'd survived, no matter who I'd saved, no matter the sleepless nights or the broken bones or the battlefield promotions, she still stood taller in the eyes of the world because she was clean. But I knew better. And now I was done staying quiet. Before going to bed, I polished the buttons on the jacket, smoothed the fabric, lined the metals up with practiced precision, checking each one like I was preparing for inspection. There was something sacred in the ritual, something steadying. I didn't need anyone's permission to wear that uniform. I'd earned it in ways that no bridal aisle walk could ever match. I didn't want to start a scene, but I also wasn't going to disappear. The morning would come quickly, but so would the reckoning. Weddings have this strange duality. On the surface, they appear to be about love and unity and the joining of two lives into something greater than the sum of its parts. But underneath all that lace and ceremony, they often become stages for unspoken wars, arenas where grudges are paraded in pastel and passive aggression hides behind centerpieces and curated smiles. And as I stepped into the venue that morning, I could feel, almost taste, the tension vibrating just beneath the polished perfection of Erin's big day. The air inside was thick with perfume, hairspray, and something else, something heavier, the kind of pressure that comes when everyone's pretending nothing is wrong while praying nobody has the audacity to break the illusion. I arrived exactly 10 minutes before the ceremony, neither early enough to help nor late enough to draw attention for the sake of it. Just perfectly timed to make an entrance that didn't scream, but didn't whisper either. I parked in the far corner of the lot, where the sun hadn't quite burned off the dew, and sat in my car for a few quiet seconds, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, at the woman I had spent years becoming, the crisp line of my collar, the shine of my shoes, the medals glinting on my chest like silent witnesses to things this wedding party could never begin to imagine. It was all intentional, every detail speaking for me in the language of earned dignity. When I opened the door and stepped onto the gravel path leading toward the hall, a few people standing outside, groomsmen, a vendor with a clipboard, a guy arranging floral displays, looked up. The conversations dipped. Eyes widened. It wasn't panic or offense I saw in their expressions, but rather confusion mixed with a touch of awe, the kind that happens when something unexpected appears, not because it doesn't belong, but because it reminds everyone of something bigger, something deeper than chiffon and choreographed dances. I didn't flinch, I didn't smile, I walked. Inside the hall, the decor was a Pinterest fever dream, candles floating in glass cylinders, eucalyptus draped over every table, custom signs with cutesy phrases like, "Choose a seat, not a side." All of it orchestrated to present the illusion of effortless elegance. I saw Mom first, adjusting a flower on one of the pews. She turned, saw me, and for a brief, flickering moment, something like shock crossed her face. Not horror, but something more rattling, like she'd just been forced to remember a version of me she had long since compartmentalized and stored away in a mental attic labeled complicated. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She didn't say anything, just looked, then glanced around, probably hoping no one had seen her falter. I took my seat in the second row, on the bride's side, of course. A few heads turned. Whispers began, soft but unmistakable. One of the older guests, someone I didn't recognize, maybe from the groom's family, leaned toward the woman beside him and asked, a little too loudly, "Is she active duty?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The uniform answered for me. Then the photographer spotted me. His camera dropped for a moment, froze. Then, as if realizing the importance of what he was seeing, he slowly raised it again and took a single, deliberate photo. Click. That sound echoed louder in my head than it had any right to. And then Erin appeared. She was radiant in the way only brides can be, styled to perfection, every hair in place, dress flowing like a commercial, smile already locked into position for maximum effect. But when she turned the corner and her eyes landed on me, that smile cracked. Not visibly, not enough for the others to see, but enough for me to notice the flicker behind her eyes, the way her face stiffened for a half second too long before recovering. She saw the uniform, she saw the medals, she saw the attention I wasn't even trying to draw. And she knew right then that whatever narrative she'd spun about me, to herself, to her friends, to her in-laws, had just unraveled like a thread pulled too tight. The groom, blissfully unaware, beamed at her. The officiant cleared his throat. The music swelled. And as Erin walked down the aisle, I sat motionless, composed, watching every step she took like a soldier surveying a silent battlefield. She glanced at me once, quick, sharp, like a reflex. And in that look, I saw something she hadn't expected to feel on her wedding day: insecurity. Not because I was trying to compete with her, not because I wanted to steal anything, but because I had shown up in truth, in authenticity, and that truth carried a weight she couldn't match with any amount of sparkle or carefully staged affection. Then came the unexpected moment. Tyler, the best man, the groom's brother, a guy I'd barely spoken to, stood at the front, straightening his cuffs. His gaze swept the room and then landed on me. Our eyes met, and after a beat, he nodded. Not a casual, dismissive nod, but a full, deliberate gesture of recognition. And then, with clear, unwavering volume, he said, "Thank you for your service." The room stilled. Even the music seemed to lower itself out of respect. For a long breath, no one moved. Erin hesitated mid-step. The groom blinked. A few guests turned in their seats to look at me fully now, not just curious, but acknowledging. And I didn't say a word. I just returned Tyler's nod, subtly, a quiet exchange that said more than anything I could have shouted. The ceremony went on as these things do. Vows were read, rings exchanged. But the energy had shifted. Erin, to her credit, kept her composure, but I could tell every time she caught someone else glancing in my direction, every time a flashbulb went off and she wondered if I'd been in the frame, every time the officiant said words like honor, commitment, and sacrifice, that the cracks beneath her calm were widening. And I hadn't done a thing, not really. I had simply walked in as myself. The war was never about stealing the spotlight. It was about refusing to disappear. There's a certain type of silence that doesn't come from absence of noise, but rather from the presence of something so undeniable it leaves people momentarily suspended, unsure whether to speak, whether to breathe, whether what they're witnessing is even real. And that silence followed me through the entire ceremony like a shadow made of glass, sharp and glinting and fragile all at once, stretching behind every step Erin took down the aisle, rippling out across the rows of seated guests like a ripple in a still pond disturbed by a single, deliberate stone. I didn't speak during the vows, didn't make a scene, didn't shift in my seat, or even let my posture relax for a moment. Because I knew, in that deep, unshakable way you just know some things, that what I had done simply by showing up, by being present in full uniform, with every part of my history stitched into the seams of my jacket and glinting from the surface of my chest, had already spoken louder than any confrontation or argument ever could have. It wasn't about protest. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about reclaiming space I had long been told that, quote, I didn't deserve to occupy. Erin stood at the altar, her voice carefully modulated as she said her vows, eyes darting over the crowd with practiced sweetness, but every few sentences, her gaze flicked in my direction, too fast to be noticed by most, but not fast enough to escape me. She was unraveling behind the veil, one twitch at a time, the words she'd memorized coming out in perfect cadence, even as her brain scrambled to retake control of a stage that was no longer hers alone. And while she stood in lace and vows and promises of forever, I sat in medals and silence and memories of lives cut short. And I saw clear as daylight that she understood what she'd done, not just to me but to the truth. After the ceremony, the guests filed out into the reception area, which had been transformed into a magazine-perfect scene of white linens, floating candles, and artful platters of hors d'oeuvres nobody would remember eating. I stayed behind a moment, letting the others rush ahead into the soft hum of background jazz and clinking glasses, because I needed to breathe, to let the magnitude of what had just happened settle in my bones. When I did finally walk in, I wasn't met with gasps or drama, just the shifting of eyes, the slow pivot of bodies, the awareness of presence. People didn't know what to say, so they said it in looks, in nods, in the quiet acknowledgments that carry more weight than applause. Tyler found me first. Still in his tux, tie a little loosened now, holding a glass of something amber and expensive. He came up beside me with a kind of casual reverence that felt disarmingly sincere. That, he said, motioning vaguely toward the ceremony space, was the classiest takedown I've ever seen. He didn't elaborate, didn't try to soften it with a laugh or explain himself, and I didn't need him to. We both knew what he meant. He was talking about power, not the loud chest-thumping kind Erin chased, but the kind you carry inside you without needing to display it. The kind you earn when you live through things most people spend their lives pretending don't exist. Then quietly, he said something that made the back of my neck go cold. You know, Erin told our family that you were dishonorably discharged. I turned to him slowly, registering the words one at a time, not because I was surprised she'd lied. That part I believed instantly, but because the audacity of that lie, the cruelty of it, struck me like a slap in the dark. Tyler raised his eyebrows as if reading my silence. Yeah, she said you went off the rails, that you didn't want help, that you were angry and unstable. I stared at him, heart pounding not from rage, but from something colder, something that ran deeper than anger. I had been betrayed, sure, but this was something else. This was a deliberate assassination of character, a rewrite of history so violent it felt like theft. She hadn't just tried to erase me. She tried to replace me with something twisted, something easier for her to outshine. And yet, Tyler smiled, almost tenderly. But we didn't buy it. My dad's a vet. One look at your record and it was obvious she was full of it. We just waited, figured one day we'd meet you in person. He raised his glass. Glad we did. The rest of the evening moved in slow, surreal waves. People approached me, not in droves, not with fanfare, but in pairs, in ones, offering nods, handshakes, soft thank yous that felt different from the hollow kind you get at airports. These people didn't want to pretend to understand my world, but they respected it, and that was enough. Erin, on the other hand, grew quieter with each passing hour, the light dimming behind her eyes as it became more and more obvious that the night had slipped from her carefully controlled grip. At one point, she tried to reclaim it. During the toasts, after Tyler had spoken with an effortless sincerity that left people misty-eyed, Erin stood up and with a brittle smile said, "And let's not forget my sister Laura, who, despite everything, still found time to be with us today. We're all so grateful." Her tone was smooth, but the edge was there, hidden under layers of etiquette, sharpened for anyone listening closely. I stood, lifted my glass, water, not wine, and said simply, "To Grace under fire." I didn't name her, didn't explain the phrase. I just let it sit there, ringing out across the clinking of glasses like a quiet verdict. And then I left. I didn't wait for cake, didn't pose for photos. I walked out into the cooling night air, the sound of music and forced celebration fading behind me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Not triumphant, not vindicated, just whole. Outside, I heard footsteps behind me. Tyler again. He didn't speak at first, just stood beside me in silence, watching the stars come out one by one. "You know," he finally said, "some people fight wars out there." He nodded toward the sky. "And some people fight them in here." He tapped his chest. "You've done both." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw something calm in his eyes, something steady. "I didn't wear white," I said, my voice low but firm. "I wore every part of who I am." And for once, for the first time in a very long time, that was enough.